Welcome back to another replay cast, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to present to you 3 more games. We're going to start off with a very special one, in my opinion, personally, because it features the reigning Fight Night champion from the Heroes Hearth Fight Night series for WarCraft 3, Hitman. From NA is going to play a human player called Spiral, which I personally have never heard of, but that might just be me being ignorant of the NA scene. Please don't take it the wrong way. I know more players from Europe, even Asia, because you get to see those guys compete on a almost weekly basis. So Hitman we of course know and love. Let's see what he's got going against Spiral. We're going to dive into the action on Echo Isles, which is always a specialty. I think Echo Isles, like I've said this in one of my previous casts as well, like basically Echo Isles is like the chessboard, the checkerboard of WarCraft 3, because the map is relatively small, which means there's only so much room for surprises, right? You can't really go for ninja expansions, you can't really go for super crazy tower rushes too much, because it's fairly predictable as to where you're going to hit your opponent from, and vice versa, of course, where your opponent can hit you. So, we're going to take a look at Hitman in the Reds, playing the Orcish race. His tag seems to be Hero Bust, so don't get confused here, guys. Hitman, a very strong player. We've seen almost immaculate play of him against Starshaped the other day when he just snatched the crown away from the Swede and became our Fight Night champion for the first time. So this upcoming Friday, he's going to have to face Night End, a strong undead player from Europe, and we're going to have an Orc versus Undead, which is my personal favorite matchup because I'm an Undead main and I love Orcs too, at least in Warcraft 3. In World of Warcraft, that's a different story. I just think it has a lot of nice things to, not nice things to watch, you know. That being said, still love me some Orc versus Human, and we're going to see his opponent Spiral in the blues, starting off with an Archmage, relatively standard stuff here. We see on Echo Isles and Terrena Stand, we sometimes see the Mountain King opening. Against Orc, though, that value is relatively limited, as the Orc units are relatively tanky. They don't die to a Stormbolt that easily. However, against Night Elf, a Mountain King, for example, could do terrible things, as we saw in WGL with Chimiko taking down Moon on this very map, for example. So, really good stuff. Now, speaking of which, we don't really see a lot of surprises. We look at the human player, and we already wonder if he's going to go for a fast expansion, if he's going to do a fast militia creep. Needs to be careful, though, of course, because Orcs are probably one of the strongest, if not the strongest race when it comes to early game harass and stealing items, stealing experience away with a sneaky Blade Master who will then just use Windwalk with a strong last hit damage. Follow-up damage can sometimes really do terrible things. Speaking of the Blade Master, he's going to pull these creeps off towards the base a little bit more, just speeds up the process a little bit more. It can also use the Grunt to sometimes get some aggro on it. He just wants the item, so he doesn't even deal with those Forest Troll Trappers. And why doesn't it deal with those? Because it would take him a lot of extra time to kill them, and when you play against a human, you always want to make sure you have map vision, right? You always want to make sure to know exactly what the human player is up to. And as we mentioned it before, the militias are being pulled right up to the natural expansion slot, and he's probably going to start this expansion. I love this preemptive killing, by the way, that Spiral is doing, and not a whole lot of players are doing it, like killing these little critters, killing off their own water elementals when they're low HP, which basically makes sure that the Blade Master doesn't get free experience. So I like that. And he's starting off with a Scouting Tower into an Arcane Tower first. So he doesn't start off with a big Town Hall immediately. He goes for the tower first to have a little bit of stationary defenses against the incoming Orc heroes and troops. Now, speaking of which, the Blade Master's already sniffed out his target, sniffed out that squishy Archmage. And the Archmage needs to go for some movement speed boosts immediately, because otherwise he might just fall victim to the constant harass. I love this peasant hiding here, by the way, in the gold mine. Is not enough to save him altogether, but he already buys some good time and forces off some nice health of the Blade Master, who gets a second kill, make it a triple, baby. He's trying to go for it, uses Windwalk to ignore unit collision, and then gets his third peasant kill. Really solid stuff, but at the same time, he also lost a lot of HP. So without healing, without a little bit of a breather in between, this Blade Master can't really do much. He's got a full stock of supply, though, on healing cells, so that's really good. The tower is now complete. New militias had to be pulled, so that really cripples the human player in terms of economy, right? If we take a look at his income, the lumber is looking rather underwhelming. That's exactly the reason why he builds up a lumber mill, to basically fight that issue. Now, this Town Hall is probably going to go through. The Blade Master still needs a little bit of extra time to get back the lost HP. His items, though, his inventory looks stacked, baby. He's got almost all the items he wants to have. We have Circle of Mobility, which will give him a bonus stats, especially agility, of course, is a Blade Master's best friend. Goes on with Claws of Attack +6 as well, so these hits with a gigantic katana will already hurt the human player quite a bit. Now, level 2, of course, is of the essence. That's why he's going for this Ogre Warrior creep camp. Tries to basically, once again, just go for the big one. Tries to go for the item, snatch it away from the human player, and get level 2 as well for critical strike. Gets the Gloves of Haste. Oh, yes. I mean, this Blade Master is a very happy orc right now. It couldn't be a better inventory, honestly. Okay, maybe if he had found more agility here, that could have actually been the dream, but you're definitely not going to complain about the Gloves of Haste. So much additional auto attack damage. Wonderful. Now, the human basically tries to ignore the orc for as much as possible. He tries to even go for a bigger creep camp here, which is near the Goblin Merchant. If Hitman is smart, which he undoubtedly is, he could go for a creep check, but he decides to go for other big item on the map. He goes for the marketplace, gets a potion of invul, which is pretty huge, but he's running out of item slots, actually. He's done so much creeping, he's running out of options to keep all those items in his hands. Now, he could sell the Gloves of Haste. I think out of all the items he's got in his early inventory, these are probably the least valuable ones, in my opinion. Rings of Protection, you should never sleep on those. You could also consider selling those if you think you can manage and micro your hero enough so it won't take enough damage. Alright, Shadow Hunter is now alive and ready. We see a Torrent Totem immediately and a Bestiary as well, so no casters for now. Looks like we're gonna see Spirit Walkers for early AoE Dispel, maybe against the water elementals, maybe for the soon-to-arrive human casters as well. Although, speaking of which, the human tech has been delayed for so much, and that is the beautiful thing about, you know, early Blade Master. Raz, if you get 3-4 peasants, it's going to take the human so long to restock on lumber, to restock his economy. Good thing for him, though, he built the early lumber mill and also maneuvered, microed all the workers over to the lumber mill. It's an old pro gamer sickness that sometimes they don't do that. Speaking of which, we see a strong attempted push here by the human player, but look at the worker repair. So good. A Hex immediately coming in for the Shadow Hunter as well. That Archmage, does he have movement speed boots? Yes, he does. Boots of speed have been acquired, but now he needs to be careful. This TP is relatively far away from the footmen. You don't want to let them lose their lives in the orc base. RIP. Jimmy didn't make it. Jimmy didn't make it out alive. He was abandoned by his comrades and dies a sad death. Now, oh my goodness, Hitman pays attention to the smallest of details. He doesn't let the burrows kill the water elemental, because otherwise that would have been no experience. When buildings kill enemy units, that's no experience for your own heroes. So he put the peons out of the burrows just in time and let the walker kill the water elemental, because when units kill enemy units, that's good for your heroes. Those little details are so good to pay attention to and really give you a little bit of a learning experience if you want to step up your own Warcraft 3 micro game. Now, this human push, not successful. This human expansion, very successful. We see 3 towers, 4 towers actually in the making. Scouting towers, just in case there is an enemy Wind Rider attack. Some orcs like to go for early Wyverns, for early Windrunners, and then use them to harass the worker line. So this tower defense looks really solid here on the side of Spiral. Speaking of Spiral, he's trying his luck again. He's trying to kind of shift, you know, the aggro, the focus fire between those burrows so they can maybe burst one down. But so far, the orc repairs look very, very strong. Look too strong, in fact. These water elementals are not enough to break it. And he's losing footman after footman. The Blade Master successfully diverted the Archmage as well. And without a second hero, I think at this point, the human army cannot engage into combat too much. Speaking of second heroes, it's almost like we sniffed it out. Hold on, wait a minute. It's a Goblin Tinker up in this mug. I have not seen this hero in 1.31 at all. Of course, he might have been used without me noticing or watching, but we used to see a Goblin Tinker in 1.30 actually a lot with Undeads, for example, when they tried to bust the Night Elf expansion, and a lot of other races were actually relying on the services of this little crafter Tinker to basically use the Gobble Pocket Factory to use the extra normal damage against buildings, most importantly Night Elf expansions, because Night Elves back in the day, they almost always got this expansion through, so you really wanted to bust it out. So a Tinker coming into this as a second hero. No Mountain King, no Naga Sea Witch. Yeah, I am flabbergasted. I do not know what to expect and think of this hero choice. In the meantime, we see the Blade Master going on a furious frenzy once again into the human worker line. Just kills 2 workers, gets out barely in time, makes sure he has enough mana left to use another Windwalk, so that was beautifully expected and planned out. In the meantime, we see human Spiral just basically stealing away a lot of creep cams off his orc opponent, and makes sure that the Tinker gets to level 2. When you remove one of your heroes from a creep camp, only the nearest hero will get all the experience. So basically, he makes sure that his second hero, who goes rockets in his pockets, by the way. Wait a minute, that is unexpected. I wasn't even looking because I was so convinced that it was going to be a pocket factory, but he's got the rockets instead. So when these rockets hit enemy units, they apply a mini stun and some damage as well. But yeah, trapped in a corner like a mouse chased by several cats. I mean, you're not going to get anything done in that case. You're going to have to use a safety TP home. At this point, I think it's safe to assume that the human player has the stronger army. He's got the stronger economy backed up as well. So he's got time. Don't take any unwise and hasty fights. You know, just wait until the time is ripe, until your moment has arrived, and then overwhelm the orc with raw numbers. Now, on the other hand, we do see the orc having the hero advantage, right? You take a look at the hero levels, we see a Shadow Hunter with level 3 already. That is going to be the backbone of every orc army. Strong healing, hexes as well is really good. Not so good against the Tinker, because I think most orcs expect a Mountain King, who is definitely a good hex target. You want to disable him for as long as possible, so he doesn't throw hammers to your face and doesn't clap you out of the map. So I think this could divert the plans a little bit of this Shadow Hunter, because how strong can he be against a Tinker who basically just wants to put in some rocket damage, and then auto attack damage, quite negligible, not really important. So speaking of which, we're going to see rockets level 2, right? Yes, we do. By the way, I'm glad to inform you that the overlay has been reintroduced. There were some issues going on last time, so I wanted to apologize for that again. But a very friendly, hold that thought, we're going to have another engagement most likely. The slow has been applied onto the raiders. Is there a dispel? Yes, there is. Spirit Walker MVP. And I think the orc might not be ready yet. There are some hurt units there already. This might not have been the best fighting location anyways, but look at those rockets nailing the orc army down in place. Every ounce of CC helps here to really get a good edge in this early stage of the fight. Level 4 for the Shadow Hunter. That is huge. We get to see level 2 Hex now on priority targets. That is wonderful. The Blade Master is getting nuked and rocketed out of his mind. Has, of course, a lot of individual protection with the Potion of Invulnerability. The Scroll of Healing needs to be used immediately, but what is it really going to do against all that slow, against all that damage coming in from that innocent-looking little Goblin Tinker? This mana regeneration, by the way, thanks to the Archmage and his Insight Aura, is insane, by the way. It's so good. This Gobbo has been spamming rockets left, right, and center. Even gets the Coda Beast on top of things to release the trapped Spellbreaker. And you know what? I think the human was just TPing out for good measure. He doesn't want to lose any units. He's so far ahead. He could have probably won that fight still, but he didn't even need to risk losing any units. Because why? Well, you have so much money at your disposal. You are a rich human kid, so you just buy TP after TP, and basically come back rejuvenated with full mana as well. A little bit of a SimCity mistake there, building too many farms at too many choke point locations, so now he's trapped inside. Sometimes in the heat of battle that happens where you just double click on the TP scroll and it sometimes puts you in these precarious situations. I think the Tinker is actually locked in for good, so he either chops down some trees or destroys the tower, then he should be fine. And he's doing exactly that, so a little bit of a base building mismanagement happens to the best of us. It's, of course, a double-edged sword sometimes. You really want to block off the entrance for enemy units so they can't just harass your worker line, but sometimes you take it too far and your own heroes and units get trapped into it. So, I think at this point, though, Hitman can also be very happy with what he's got achieved, because not only did he fight relatively well, he most importantly got up his own expansion, right? So it's 2 base economy versus 2 base economy. Heroes, I would still say the Orc has the upper hand in. The Blade Master becomes a really terrifying force at level 4 and 5 when he gets bigger crits off. The Shadow Hunter, of course, we all know how strong that troll is. But overall, I think the human is looking pretty okay too. He's currently researching magic sentries, so towers can reveal invisible units, which is great against the Blade Master harass. Pretty solid. Fortified burrows have already been researched, so it takes significantly longer for units to destroy these little things. I like this positioning as well. Puts the frontline units like the footmen and the spellbreakers up in the front, so these relatively squishy sorceresses in the back cannot be nuked down that easily. But I gotta say, those rockets, they are dealing so much damage. They're getting so much value done. And I think at this point, despite there being Spirit Walkers, the CC is a little bit too much, right? I think the human player actually completely neglected priests. Only two priests here for a little bit of extra healing, but most of the human backline consists of sorceresses. That means slow galore, invisibility galore at some point, and the Blade Master can't handle the pressure. Look at the AoE damage. Ricket contraption, man. What are you doing? Where have you been all my life? I've always wanted to see those rockets come up out of his pockets, and they are dealing great damage. The mana costs seem to be minimal as well. So I'm not too worried about the Tinker suffering there too much. Even uses a mana pot, and he's just going to spam those rockets away heavily and happily. Of course, keep in mind that thanks to his passive, the rockets deal more damage. The Tinker's E ability, oftentimes overlooked and underrated. And I think at some point, these sorcerers are untouched, the Spellbreakers are looking good, and are laughing right into the Orc's face, and Hitman, the reigning champion of the Heroes Hearth Fight Night, has to tap out and type GG in probably a very, you know, surprised and unexpected fashion. I'm not sure if he saw that coming. I certainly didn't. I'm pretty sure you guys didn't either. Although Twitch chat and YouTube comments are always right. So that was a really unexpected outcome of that game. I gotta say, I was very surprised. Could you have countered that Goblin Tinker a little bit better? Perhaps. Perhaps we could have seen a third Orc hero coming into the fray. Perhaps we could have also gone for a couple of Wind Riders to really deal with those sorcerers in the back. I feel like these casters on the human side were untouched for the most part. They reigned supreme. There was no damage onto those little sorceresses and priests whatsoever. Maybe even some Headhunters in the mix. It's hard to say. The Spellbreakers, of course, were also a pretty big problem. So in that case, either the Grunts were not doing enough work, or Taurens could have been considered too. Of course, Taurens are then a little bit susceptible against the slow of the Sorc. So you could really see how this composition of the human really caused a lot of headaches for even the most experienced of Orcs. And in that case, Hitman didn't look too good. But yeah, that was game number 1. Let me know how you enjoyed it. If you enjoyed it, feel free to drop a thumbs up underneath the video. Drop a comment as well, and maybe subscribe to the channel for more Warcraft 3 action. The next replays we're going to actually record right now, so stay tuned for the next one, and I'll see you in a bit. Thank you so much for watching. Peace.